My name is Joe DeAngelis. I'm a research associate with APA's Hazards Planning Center. Today I'm joined by Nate Woiwode, who is the project manager for North American Risk Reduction and Resilience with the Nature Conservancy. It's a mouthful. So today we're going to be talking a bit about the Naturally Resilient Communities Project, which we think here at APA is a pretty vital resource in the use of green infrastructure, especially in integrating that more into the planning process.
Yeah.
Before we get to that, do you mind telling us a bit about your work with the Nature Conservancy,
Sure.
where that overlaps a bit with planning and resilience?
Yeah, absolutely. The Conservancy a few years ago really recognized the importance of informing the decisions that communities make as they start to deal with the impacts of climate change. Mm-hmm. If you put a wall between the water and the buildings you're trying to protect, eventually the water meets the wall and you lose everything in between. And so that was sort of the beginning of our realization that we need to be playing in this resilience space. Yeah. And so what we do is we work to promote the role of nature. Mm-hmm. How can marshes reduce flooding? How can dunes stop the storm surge that's coming in? Mm-hmm. Or how do rivers, if they're allowed to move naturally, allow you to enjoy a more natural river experience while also seeing less flooding in your community? Yeah. And so my job is to work with communities across the country and serve as a resource for our chapters. We're in 50 chapters. We're in over 60 countries around the world. And so we serve as a resource to help communities and help our staff on the ground actually start to implement projects.
Great, yeah. So APA is one of 6 partners, I think, on this project. Would you tell me a bit more about the development of the project, where the ideas came from?
Yeah, absolutely. This is, we certainly weren't the first ones to be thinking about the role of nature, and it was great. It was sort of this amazing energy to see that everybody was really on the same page in wanting to push these ideas. And so when we talked to you folks at APA, we also talked to the Association of State Floodplain Managers, the American Society of Civil Engineers, and the National Association of Counties. And that group together, we really were trying to replicate what the decision making was like at the municipal level when someone decides to make a project like this. So how does a mayor actually decide to pursue a project that involves nature? But what we realized was that we needed to communicate these ideas clearly and in a very short amount of time. Yeah. And so we wanted to reach out and make sure there was a design firm involved. And so Sasaki came on board to help bring sort of a design perspective. And that group altogether has really done an amazing job of both giving us a sense of all the different things that go on with each of these different roles, but then distilling down what are the important pieces of information everyone needs to know and how do we get it out.
Yeah. The use of green infrastructure, it's a pretty popular thing these days. Can you talk a bit about the general benefits and drawbacks that are associated with it that this tool is, sort of envisioned to try to fix?
Yeah. A lot of times if you were to use a more traditional approach to address flooding, you're building something that is going to be working maybe 1 or 2 times a year. Yeah. And when we talk about green infrastructure, really what we're trying to talk about is what's the everyday reality of your community. Yeah. And so if you are investing in a park that can flood when it needs to, you have that place that retains water and reduces flooding, but you also have a park the rest of the year.
Right.
And so the benefits you start to see the benefits when you think about all the other things that a community needs to address. Public health, economic development, creating those areas for sort of gathering and social cohesion. Now the challenge is that while we as in sort of the professional sphere and the planning sphere, getting very comfortable with the idea of green infrastructure in a stormwater context, in a water quality context, the idea of big flooding events is still really a tough nut to crack. Yeah. And so it's both it's a challenge to start to socialize the idea, make sure that people are comfortable with it, but it takes a different set of skills to think about this. If you tell an engineer to build a wall, they'll build a wall to the exact specifications. When you're talking about natural systems, it's just a different type of approach. Yeah. And so there's still some hurdles to overcome in really starting to see the widespread adoption of green infrastructure. But we have success stories that we can point to, and we're very excited about those, and we're seeing more and more all over the country.
So, I mean, I assume that this is sort of where the project comes in. There's these issues of cost, there's issues of communication with other members of local government, other people who are working in the spheres of engineering and that sort of work. So, I mean, would you tell me a bit more about the various techniques and case studies that are on the website that actually get to the root of this problem?
What we heard when we talked to a lot of people was don't build just another tool. And so what we wanted to do was actually sort of serve as like the introductory chapter. How do we bring people gently into this idea? And then connect them to other resources that would be helpful down the road. And so what the site contains is 30 strategies, and they range in scale from something as simple as a rain garden that you could do on just a city street corner to a setback levee where you're talking about miles and miles and miles of construction or moving a levee back. And what we try to do is focus on basically any type of water. Whenever there's water in a place you don't want it to be, how do you as a community figure out a way to deal with it? So there's solutions in there that address river flooding, address coastal flooding, they address erosion and stormwater. And what the other thing we wanted to provide in all of this was we wanted it to be real. And so there are a lot of ideas that are out there, and we wanted to provide some evidence that this was happening. And so we currently have a body of 22 case studies, and those case studies represent most, if not all, the strategies that we have, and they're drawn from around the country. And there's stories like in downtown Nashville where they had a brownfield. It was a sort of undevelopable area, and it kept flooding. And the community said, hey, let's go in, let's clean it up, let's actually make an asset right here on the river. And so they built a waterfront park. It's designed to flood in high water, but it now has an amphitheater. It is a place that people go on a daily basis, and it is driving economic development. It is driving this sort of revitalization of the area. And that's just one of many stories. I mean, and they range, again, the stories range from something as simple as a community in New Jersey deciding that they wanted to restore their dunes and just going out and putting trees and putting in snow fencing to collect sand over time and actually plant their dunes, sort of that initiative from the very community level to massive projects along whole river systems in the Pacific Northwest.
Great. Do you have an ideal, use case scenario for a planner or practitioner to actually use this kind of work? Because I mean, there are other tools out there. But in conversations with planners that we've had, a lot of people don't necessarily know how to, or they're not as intuitive as they might have wished. So,
we sort of had three goals when we built this. We wanted it to be easy. We wanted it to communicate the value of natural systems and nature in general. It's not solely just forests and trees, but it's also living shorelines or things where you can allow the natural process to continue, but you still are getting that protection. And then we also wanted it to be sort of designed to inspire the imagination. And the reason I say that is for a planner, what we've seen is most planners are intuitively get this idea, right? You think about the way that a community connects. You think about the pieces of community in a way that seems to naturally embrace this. And so the way we hope that planners might use it is actually to give them some tools to promote this to the people at the end of the day who are making those decisions on which project design goes forward. And so we've done a few things in the tool, including create it. We want it to be only 3 or 4 clicks to get to a strategy that would work. We want it to be highly searchable so that you could go through and change the criteria and sort of identify something that can work for you. We also wanted to make it both virtual and real world, and so you can print out each of the strategies, you can print out each of the case studies in a two-pager, and you can go and take it and put it on someone's desk and say, hey, this is the thing I want. And our sense is that it's a way to really give you a shortcut to get to the conversation you want to have, and hopefully then use it to start to promote that vision that we think planners sort of bring to the table as this is the future of the city we want to see.
Absolutely. Great. Well, I mean, we're sort of close to the end now. Is there anything else you kind of want to add to this?
I just think it's been really exciting to see how
Yeah.
this project has taken off, and we're now hearing literally from around the world. From Indonesia, we've been contacted by the World Bank. We've been contacted by folks here in the U.S. In the U.S. government to figure out how they can connect to this work. So we think we've hit on something important here, and as we go forward, we're really trying to figure out what the shape of what comes next is, and we're trying to solicit ideas from folks about what they need to promote these ideas. At the end of the day, we at the Nature Conservancy think these are good ideas. I think you guys at American Planning Association think these are good ideas. But it's the folks on the ground and in those communities where they don't have all the resources to do what they do in New York that really need that opportunity to see it real. And so we would encourage people to get in touch with us and seek out the site and explore it and let us know how we can make it better.
Great, thanks. Well, we should mention that the website is nrcsolutions.org. Yeah, it's easily reachable from there.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a good experience for planners. And like Nate said, we're getting a lot of great feedback on it. So Nate, thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.